Hello everyone. Today we are continuing on with our next lesson, and this is not part two, but it feels a bit like a continuation of the last lesson because today as well we are talking about the conditional form. Last week, for those of you that are with us live, last week we talked about the tada form. Today we're talking about the ba form. I wish I could say these are the only two forms that show conditionals, but it's not. But today we're going to focus on ba, and then we're going to do a bit of compare and contrast with tada, including some differences that are not outlined in the lesson, because we try and keep the lessons from getting too long. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about one that is ba, and it's called ba because all the different forms, whether it's noun, adjective, or verb, they all end in ba. And unfortunately, this hasn't happened in a while, but this requires some new conjugation forms we have not seen before. And so we need to jump back into those. We'll try those, we'll practice them a little bit, and then we will continue on with the actual usage of the ba. So first, let's jump into our first big panel of stuff. So verbs. This is probably the most common usage of ba, although I'm not sure. You see it with adjectives quite a lot as well. So, again, like all our conjugations up until now, we need to remember are they ichidan, godan, or our special verbs, and then based on that, how we are going to conjugate them into the ba. So let's take a look at these three lines. We've got our ichidan verbs up at the top. Remember, those are the ones that more or less involve you dropping the ru and then adding a bunch of stuff afterwards. Compared to the other ones which involve a spelling change, you kind of change the character on the end. The ichidan always involves a cut and then a replacement. With these ichidan verbs like miru or tsuzukeru, you're going to drop that ru off the end and add reba, which sounds like liver. Add liver. Just drop the ru and add liver to it. So miru becomes mireba, tsuzukeru becomes tsuzukereba, and so on. With the godan verbs, you're going to do that shifting that we usually do. And this is, you'll notice it looks kind of similar to the potential form that we learned quite some time ago. The potential form before, let me throw it into the channel. We have ao, to meet. The potential form, like to be able to meet or can meet, was aeru. And with this one, it's almost as if we're taking the potential form, dropping that ru and adding the ba. But to think of it a different way, we're changing the spelling of that last character from the u step to the e step. So instead of u, looking at ao, instead of u, it becomes e, ku becomes ke, bu becomes be, and whatnot. And so ao becomes aeba, kiku becomes kikeba, yobu becomes yobeba, which is fun to say. And then we've got our two special nouns. Suru becomes sureba. So it's kind of like an ichidan verb in that sense. And kuru becomes kureba. So we've got those. We have a bit more, and then we're going to practice. Half of this lesson is just the construction, just the spelling, because it's a bit of a change from what we've had so far. And I want to make sure, and we've got adjectives and nouns and all that good stuff. Let's look at a bit more of the verbs. Now, we have noticed in the past that anytime you have anything, really, whether it's a verb or an adjective or a noun, ending in nai in some form, the negative form, basically, we have treated them as adjectives when we think about other ways that we can conjugate them. And this is the same. We will see some actual adjectives in just a sec, so we're kind of jumping the gun. But with the negative forms, minai, you drop the e and you add kereba. So taking a look at this, I'm going to read a few of these. Minai becomes minakereba. Remember, we're talking about the conditionals. Let me tell you what this actually means. Minai means to not see. Minakereba means if you don't see. So just to show you the pair all together, there's miru, to see. Mireba, if you see. Minakere, too many K's in there. Minakereba would be if you don't see. You also have awanai, awanakereba, kikanai, kikanakereba, and so on. Now, as I noted, we are treating that E on the end of it, the E on the end of the nai, as an adjective, which should make this next slide, it's not really a slide, the panel, not too surprising. When we have our E adjectives, we're just going to take the E, drop it off, just like we had a second ago, and add kereba. So, tanoshii would be tanoshkereba. Or, if you want to get really long, the negative form, tanoshiku because we have tanoshikunai. And we say, oh, there's that E at the end. Let's just chop that off and add kereba. Tanoshiku. We have our special verb. E, good, is always changed over to the yoi form when we're conjugating it. So instead of, there's no such thing as ikereba, there is yoi changing to yokereba. Or yokunakereba, the positive and negative forms. So we're only halfway done. We have not adjectives and then we have nouns to do, but I'd like to practice this just a little bit. So let's stick, I might mention positive, I might mention negative. I'm going to throw some words out at you. I'm going to give you the English. This is pre-intermediate, so let's make it a little harder. I'm going to give you the English. Please give me the Japanese form. Keep in mind we're sticking with these conditionals. So let's start with easy. If you think. So take the verb think, chop off that end, whatever it happens to be, or change it, and give me the conditional form. There's actually two answers to this one because there's two think verbs. I'll take either. So I see a few different things. So we have omo. If it's omo, remember that's the godan, so it's just a spelling change. Omoeba. If you're going with kangaeru, that's our ichidan verb, which means we drop the ru and we add reba. We add some liver to the end of it. By the way, just as an aside, most of you probably all already know this, but what's the difference between these two thinks? Between omo, to think, and kangaeru, to think? It comes up on Renshu from time to time. What's the difference between the two? I see other people typing, so I'm not going to answer or respond until I see a few more responses. So the first answer may be right, may not be right. Okay. So everyone is kind of close, a little bit off and on. let me give you the way that um, I have thought of it that makes it easiest for me. The way I always think of it is this way. I think of omo as being a state. You have a thought, you are not thinking about it. Omo is just taking something that's already in your head and throwing it out there. That's why people often say omo is for like an opinion, because an opinion is something you already have. You have that opinion. It's like, and it might be an opinion or it might be a belief or something, but it's already in there. You were not making that opinion right then. So if I say I think sushi's delicious, that's my opinion, and I didn't come up with it now. I've had sushi many times. Kangaeru is the actual thought. It is you say I'm thinking right now. Give me a few minutes. It is the thing that takes up time from your life to be able to finish. That's kangaeru. So if you say, well, what did you do from 9 to 9:30? Well, I was thinking. That's kangaeru. And then once you're done thinking and you have that thought or you have that opinion or whatever, then you can say omo. Omo is just a state, the result of whatever it is. Thinking, kangaeru is the action. It's the think, 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 think. Think harder. That's kangaeru. Okay, let's come back to the lesson. I gave you, we've only done one so far. Let's do, okay, back to the practice. If you don't do, kind of a hard one. Actually, super hard. Let's do the first one. Wait, sorry. Let's do the first one. If you do, this one was actually in the lesson. If you do, sureba. Good. All right, let's flip it around. If you don't do, so sureba is the positive form. So if you do something, sureba. Shinakereba. So remember, to not do is shinai. Drop the e, add the kereba. And maybe some of you, you're starting to think, oh, I've seen this. I've seen this before. Shinakereba naranai. It's that must. It's part of that must formation. And very overly literally, this means if you don't do it, it will not become. Naranai, not become. And so you have to do it. To have something occur, to become, to happen, you must do this first thing. If you don't do it, it won't become. It's your double negative. In other words, you must do it. That's where it's coming from. How about if something is cheap? So it's like, if it's cheap, I'll buy it. How would you say that? Yasukereba. Good. Other people are typing. Please finish. As I've said before, I love to see the same answer 1,000 times. So never stop typing because someone else types out before you. The act of typing is helping it get stuck in your head. Let's flip it around. Yasukereba is if it's cheap. How do we say if it's not expensive? Takaku takaku nakereba. Or if you want to get into tongue twister territory, you can do things like this. If it's and you hear this, oh, I think okay. Wait, actually, let me tell you. How do you do if it's not warm? If it's not warm, here's your tongue twister one. So there's 3 steps here. Warm, change it to not warm, change it to if it's not warm. 暖かく、暖かくば、暖かくなければ. Or if you're going through some kind of crazy super double negative, you can say if it's not warm, and then you have things like 暖かくなくなければ, and then your brain loops and you explode. So I wouldn't recommend going that far. Okay, let's keep going. I don't want to bore you to death with the spelling. It's important, but let's continue. All right, so we've done verbs, positive and negative. We've done adjectives, positive and negative. We've done e-adjectives. Let's jump over to, where are they? There we go. Here are nouns. If it's a boy, if it's your hobby, if it's whatever. And with that, we're going to use, basically what we're doing is we're taking the des, the des form. And we are conjugating that. So to take des and make the conditional form of it, we actually say de areba. So we have here in front of us, fukushu dareba, if it's review, or if it's a negative form, what's the negative form of des? We say janai. And so fukushu janakereba, shumi de areba, or shumi janakereba. So real quick, using this, how would you say if it's not a problem? If it's not a problem. This is actually something you wouldn't, well, you would say in Japanese, but it's not quite as common as what we would say. We would say, if it's not a problem, please help me. Or if it's not a problem, I'd like to do this. You do say it, but it's not quite mondai janakereba. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going. Now, you might have already figured this out in your head, but not adjectives are the same way. You have the de areba in front, or janakereba in the back. So benri de areba or benri janakereba. If it's convenient, if it's not convenient, same thing as the nouns. Nouns and not adjectives are the same. Now, this first form, this not adjective plus de areba, you actually don't see it that often, as Renshu notes in the next panel. It's not super common. It sounds a bit formal, a bit stilted, and there's another form, nara, because why have one or two conditionals when you can have 1,000? There's another form that you hear more often. This negative form you do here. But the nara one, what we talk about later. If we talked about all the conditionals at once, we'd never make it out. We would all die of old age before the lesson ended. So now we've got these conditionals. And we can drop these in the same way that we could put the tada conditional that we learned earlier. But let's look at some examples and think about how these differ from one another. So let's look at these three. Now I'm going to read through all of them first, and then we'll talk about them. 友達に会えばよろしくお伝えてください. This sounds like something you would never say in English. Please send my regards. Maybe a more natural way of getting the same feeling across in English is tell them I said hello. If you see that person, tell them I said hi. This is something that's common in English. You would not translate that literally in Japanese. If you see them, konnichiwa to yute kudasai, you wouldn't say that. This one is this idea of yoroshiku. Please give them my yoroshiku. Please transmit that to them. This is a much more common way of saying it. So if you see your friend, or if you meet your friend, please give them my regards. Please say hi to them for me. These all basically mean the same thing. This is one that all teachers, I'm sure, hope for. 授業が楽しければ生徒は勉強したくなる. If the class is fun, the students will want to study. Or more literally, it's not want to study. They will change into wanting to study. That's where that したくなる comes in. And you actually do hear this a lot. We've talked about the Thai form. We've talked about naru. But you do hear this a lot. My kids love using it. Taking the Thai form and attaching it to the naru. What it's doing is showing a change from not wanting to do that thing, or not necessarily not wanting to, but not having a desire to do that. Changing over to having that desire. So this is one that I hear a lot. 食べたくなった. It's like, oh, I didn't want this before. I didn't want to eat this before, but now I'm really feeling like I want pizza or sushi or ramen or curry or whatever it happens to be. So you do hear this a lot. Taking the Thai form, changing into the adjective, or not the adjective, the adverb form, taku, and then adding natta. And that's what's happening here. The students will go from a state of not wanting to study or not having the desire to study to wanting to study, wanting to learn. And last one, if you don't see your mother, you can give this to her at Christmas or at Christmas, on Christmas. So these are all usages of the ba form. So some of you have probably already gone through this lesson, so maybe you know what's on the next panel. But let's look at these and specifically look at the second half of each sentence. How would you tone those three actions? Yes, they are generally positive. That is a very common usage for the ba form, the ba conditional form. And so you often see ba used when giving advice. In fact, there's a form that we're going to learn later on, but I'll go ahead and show it to you now because with the ba form, this next grammar expression is extremely easy to do. And you often see it, and it's usually shown as the ba-i. And all it is the conditional form with e. It's good if you do this thing. And so that's how you give advice. You say, yeah, it would be good if you do this. Hanasebai. You should talk to them. It's not as strong as you should talk to them, but it's got the same feeling. It'd be good if you talk to them, him, her, whoever. Taberebai. It'd be good if you ate it. So the ba form is extremely common with this positive thing. Because that, comparing it to tara is a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not as exclusive in its meaning. Tara can be used with a positive or negative ending, whereas the ba will generally have this positive meaning on the end of it. So let's look at, we're going to kind of jump back and forth between these examples. So, sorry, I already said that. So let's take a look at these. These are both okay, as Kalchan is telling us. 勉強すればいい点数を取れる。勉強したらいい点数を取れる。These are both fine. Because it's positive, both of them work. If you study, you'll get a good score. However, if we're switching over to something negative, you're not going to want to use ba. If the main clause is negative, that's the second one. You've got the conditional clause first, main clause second. If it's negative, you're going to want to stick to tara. 勉強しなければテストに失敗する. So that's a little strange. However, 勉強しなかったらテストに失敗する. If you don't study, you're going to fail the test. Now, note, when I am talking about this negative sense, it's the second clause. The first clause, now you might think 勉強しなければ is negatively toned. And you might think, oh, it's talking about that. But that is not the case. So let me give you an example. This would be okay. 勉強しなければ友達と遊べる. If I don't study, I can play with my friends. So we're talking about the positive or negative toning of the second clause, the main clause in the sentence. Now, it might be that, let me jump here. It might be that there is an intermediary negative thing, but if we're looking at the overall tone of the sentence, we could have something like this. 勉強しなければテストに失敗することが分かってたくさん勉強した. So this one sounds closer to, you know, if I didn't study, I would fail. Knowing that, wait, sorry, there we go. So I studied a lot. And that's fine. Now, a few more things. This is all that Renshu's lesson covers, because we try and keep the lessons from getting too long. But there's a few more things I'd like to do to compare the two. Let's jump back. Let's stick on this page. Okay. So we've talked about the positive negative sense. Ba is positive, whereas tara can be positive or negative. Now let's step back and think about them more on a conceptual level. Another way you can think about it is ba tends to be hypothetical. You were talking about something that, you know, hasn't happened yet and may not happen. It has more of a hypothetical sense to it. So all of these, if you see your friend, so I'm sorry, let me jump up so you can see the green one. There we go. If you see your friend, so there's no suggestion or nuance saying, oh, they're going to see their friend. It's just an if. You might not see your friend. So it's a hypothetical. Compare this. So let me type out just that one chunk. So tomodachi ni aeba, this is just a purely hypothetical. However, comparing it to the other one that we learned last week, tomodachi ni attara, again, this one can be hypothetical. It can also refer to an actual expected thing to happen. Does anyone remember last week, if you were with us last week, we were learning about tara. We said it's often translated as if. We also said it's often translated as something else. There's one more word we used to describe tara. What was it? When. And we kind of talked about it in the sense of like if versus when. Oh, it's not an if, it's a when. If has less, certainty to it. And that's why it's a hypothetical, like ba. If you're getting static, it might be my jacket moving around because I'm frozen. So I'm wrapped up in a super thick jacket. So that might be it. Getting back to it. With Tara, though, it's not necessarily the case in the same way that we have if and then, but it could be if, it could be not then, sorry, if and when. It could be when. So Tara can also be used to talk about things that are presumed this is going to happen. When this happens, this other thing takes place. Ba, however, is restricted, and you're seeing a pattern here. Ba is much more restricted than Tara. Ba is restricted to just the hypotheticals. Now, even if it's something that is likely to happen, you could still use ba. It's just we're talking without any presumption that it's going to happen. It could, it couldn't. So, let's summarize real fast. We're going to say ba is for positive main clauses. And it's for hypotheticals. Tara, positive and negative. Hypothetical or actual. So, with this in mind, we have a bit of time. Let's practice some. Let's practice with this a bit. Let's talk about some hypotheticals. So, I'm going to give you some easy ones. I'm going to give you the first half of the sentence and try and finish it out for me. And then afterwards, we'll try and expand it out to where you write the entire sentence yourself. There you go. There's sentence number 1. お金があれば I'll give you a minute or two to answer that, and then I'll be back. Okay, let's see what people are saying. If I have money, I'll quit my job. I'll go on a trip. I will go on a trip. Someone else said I can go on a trip. So different usages. One's talking about their volition, what they will do. The other one's talking about what they can do. They're not saying that they will do it. They're just saying that would become possible for them. And those both work. All right, let's keep trying. So let's switch over to a noun, a non-noun, a verb. Sorry. 日本に行けば I know it's a boring, it's a contrived example, but you know it works for us. Like go to Japan. So let's see. Someone's gonna have some sushi. Go to some shrines, temples. Someone is really fixated on takoyaki. Oh no, one said takoyaki, one said okonomiyaki. My apologies. Both good. It's hard to avoid. It's hard to avoid food. It's something we've noted over literally years of doing these lessons and events. We always come back to food. Okay, let's do one more. How about this one? 明日は晴れであれば。Now, I note that someone said if it's sunny tomorrow, I'll sleep. That makes it sound like if it's not sunny, then you won't sleep. Like if it's rainy, you're getting out there, which makes me think you're a frog. You probably, my guess is, you probably want to say, even if it's sunny, I'm going to sleep. And in that case, you'd be using the demo. Hare demo nemasu. That's true. They could be napping outside. Okay. So, since we have a bit of extra time, this lesson wound up faster than I expected. It's not part of this lesson, but since I mentioned it earlier, I would like to try using that Bai version of this hypothetical because it's so useful. Um, it's so nice. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a problem. Let's say I have that problem. I have that problem, and tell me. So I'm coming to you for advice. I'm like, what should I do? And please tell me what I should do. Saying if you do A, then E. It's good. Nani nani ba E. So let's say 友達と喧嘩した。Now, someone did throw out a yokata, and that's actually a very different meaning, and I'll mention it at the end. Quite common usage, but a different meaning from what we're doing now. So in the past, I had the fight with the friend, let's say yesterday, and you're giving me advice for what to do. And so if you're giving me advice for what to do, it's something I haven't done yet. It will happen in the future. So we need a non-past version of E. Quite literally, we're saying if you do something, it will be good. For example, someone says, if you eat vegetables, that would be good. Now, I'm not quite sure if that would work with with a friend, having a fight with a friend, but who knows? So nakayoshi is a term that kind of means like you're on good terms with someone, but it's not really something you can do as an action, if that makes sense, when you're giving advice. There is a word though that's quite close to probably what you're going for, and it's nakanaoru. And the same naka is the same naka as in nakagai, nakayoshi. Naoru is to fix, so it's like you're fixing your friendship. It usually involves apologies and talking to one another. Someone else said, ayamarebai. It'd be good if you apologize. Someone else is of the ghosting variety. They said, just block them. Even though my original sentence said I had a fight with them, suggesting I was part of that. I was part of that fight. It wasn't them fighting with me. It was a mutual fight. So kaiwa is usually not an action that you take. It's like something that happens. You'd probably use this verb. Oops. You'd probably say hanasu. So hanasebai. And in giving advice, like someone did just above me, you can give a negative action to say it'd be good if you don't do this. So mushi shinakerebai. So they're saying you probably shouldn't ignore them. And that works. You can, the positive, or rather the advice can be a suggestion to do something or not to do something. Now, we actually are running short on time. And because it got brought up, and I don't like leaving dangling threads, I do want to talk about the one someone brought it up. And this is a bit outside of our lesson, but let's talk about it since it's here and we've got a few minutes. So this is often written this way. If you look it up in grammar, grammar resources, bayokata. And on its face, it looks like it's just the past tense form of bai, which is true. So here's my question. If bai is used to give advice, why would you give advice to yourself in the past? This is not rhetorical. Think about it. Why would you give advice to yourself in the past? And yes, the first two people answered it correctly. This is used to show regret. And the absolute most common form of it is sureba yokatta, because suru is your do verb, and so you can use it to generalize across almost anything. And so you hear this a lot. Oh, I should have done it. And you can more concretely say. Let me tell you one that has happened to me so many times in my life. It's almost cliche. So if this hasn't happened to you yet, hopefully it doesn't. You're going somewhere, you're traveling, you have a chance to take a picture of something that you want to take a picture of, and you say, oh, I can do that after, when we're walking back. I don't need to do it now. Let me tell you, that chance never comes. If you have a chance to take a picture, you take that picture right then. And so it's always like, oh, I'll do it after, and then the after never comes. So then afterwards, I say, I should have taken a picture then, at that time. So the bayokata is only used to show regret or giving yourself advice in the past, even though it's too late for that. If you're just saying, I'm glad I did something, you don't need this ba form. There's no conditional there. You're just saying, something. For example, if you are saying, "I'm glad I talked," so we're talking about fighting with your friend. Let's say it's a man, a guy. You might say something like this: "I'm glad I talked to them." 彼と話してよかった. No conditional because it happened. Then you're using it to mark a positive feeling about some past action. But the ba is the conditional, whether it's going to happen or it, already happened. But we're using it there. Anyway, this brings us to the end of our lesson, and I am thinking now that we should have a lesson in the future where we talk about all the conditionals all at once after we've learned each one separately. And so I'll try and get that set up at some point. But if you need to look at this again, remember this lesson is available inside of Renshu, always under, whether you're in the app or the website, under resources. You can't see it on the recording, but resources in the menu. And then if you go to Japanese lessons, it will always be available in here. And this video will be available quite soon once I upload it. It'll be right down here. And so you can take a look at this and look at it more slowly if you need to, but it's here for you if you need it. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you join us next time. お疲れ様でした。